Hi, welcome to Mrs. Rodriguez's mini lesson video. Today I'm going to cover solving one-step equations. Now, the steps to solving one-step equations is to first draw your river, which helps you make sure that your equation always stays balanced. And basically that means we have to remember whatever we do to one side of the equation, we have to do the exact same thing to the other side. Your second step is to do the inverse operation, which is just a fancy way of saying do the opposite. And then we can solve and check. So we already went through that the river, whatever we do to one side, we have to do to the other. So let's think about the inverse operations. Inverse operations mean to do the opposite. So if in the problem we're adding, then the opposite would be subtracting. If it's subtracting, the opposite would be addition. If it's multiplying, the opposite would be division. And if it's dividing, then the opposite would be multiplication. So let's take a look at our examples. In the first example, we have x plus 2 equals 10. So the first step would be draw the river, which is just a straight line going down on the equal sign to help remind us that whatever we do to one side, we have to do the exact same thing on the other side to keep our equation balanced. Once we have the river, our second step is to do the inverse or opposite. In this case, we have x plus 2. So the opposite would be to subtract 2. And then remember that river, whatever we do to one side, we have to do to the other. So I'm also going to have to subtract 2 on the other side. 2 minus 2 is 0, so they cancel out. And we end up with x plus 0 equals 8. 10 minus 2 is 8. So our final answer is going to be x equals 8. Last but not least, we can always check to see if we did it correctly by plugging the answer into the original equation. So if we're saying x equals 8, then I could plug that back in and see does it work. So if it's x plus 2 equals 10, we want to know, does 8 plus 2 equal 10? And sure enough it does, so we know we did it correctly. In our second example, we have a divided by 5. So remember that that symbol is not only the fraction symbol, but it also means to divide. Okay, so a divided by 5 equals 12. So step 1, we draw our river. Step 2, we do the inverse or opposite. If it's a divided by 5, the opposite would be to multiply by 5. Don't forget, whatever we do to one side, we have to do to the other. So I'm also going to multiply by 5 on the other side. 5 divided by 5 is 1. 1 times a is a, so they cancel out. And on the other side, we have 12 times 5, which is 60. Last but not least, we can check if we got the correct answer by plugging it back into the original equation. So we want to know, if it's a divided by 5 equals 12, does 60 divided by 5 equal 12? Well, let's see. 5 goes into 6 one time. We subtract, we get an answer of 1. Drop down the 0. 5 goes into 10 two times, which is 10. And we're left with no remainder. So yes, it works out. 5 goes into, or 60 divided by 5 is 12. So we did it correctly. For our last example, we have 8x. Now in this case, we need to remember that a number next to a variable means that they're multiplying. So 8x means 8 times x. Okay, important. So step number 1, draw the river. Step number 2, inverse, do the opposite. So the opposite of multiplication would be division. So I'm going to divide both sides by 8. 8 divided by 8 is 1. We're left with just x on the left-hand side. And 56 divided by 8 is 7. Now we can always check by plugging in our answer into the original equation to see if we did it correctly. So we want to know if it's 8 times x equals 56, does 8 times 7 equal 56? And you can check on a calculator if you'd like, but yes, it does. So 8 times 7 is 56. That's it for today's mini lesson. Hope it helps. Bye.